everyone, welcome back. So you just watched the vocabulary that we're going to be using for chapter 11, and now I'm going to dive into 11.1. So that's chapter 11, first lesson. Okay, so this is starting on page 483. So it says, use the model to write the fractions that are the same as 1/2. So if you're looking in your book, it has all those fraction strips, which are fantastic to use. Okay, so like I said, back in chapter 10, if you could print them off, that would be helpful. Or if you just know that you can always reference back to this page to help you. So we have to write the fractions that are the same as 1/2. Well, at the very top, I have 1 whole, and then right below that, I have the 2 1/2. So let me see if I can cover up the answer. And it looks something like that, okay? That line right in the middle, so it's splitting 1/2, and then you can see it really well after the 1/3 because it splits 1/3 right down the middle, so it's 1/2, so that splits there. So we are just writing all the fractions that are the same as that 1/2, okay? So when I'm looking at my fraction strips, I need to skip over that 1/3 because that's not equivalent, and then I'm going to keep going. So when I'm looking at my fourths, where are my fourths split equally? They're split at 2/4. Okay, then I'm going to move down to my sixth. Where are my sixths split equally or evenly as a half? That would leave me with 3/6. And then finally, I'm going to look at my eighths, and where are my eighths split equally or evenly in half? At the 4/8. So those are my 3 fractions, and all of those are equal to 1/2. Okay? So that was the first part that we needed to do. The second part that we need to do is the reasoning. Can you write a fraction with a denominator of 8 that is the same as 3/4? If so, explain. So here we go. Something with a denominator of 8 that is the same as 3/4. Okay, so there are a couple ways to do it. You can always draw a picture. You can think about multiplication facts. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to look at the book. Okay, and I'm going to look at the model above. So using the model above, I'm going to find 3/4. So I'm going to my section of fourths, and I'm going to count over 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to go down. And from the edge of that 1/4 mark, so to the very right where there's only 1/4 left, so I'm at 3 equal fourths shaded in, I'm then going to count, I'm then going to count my eighths across and see how many eighths that I could potentially shade in with my pencil. So I would shade in the 3 equal shares of the 1/4, and then I'd go down to my eighths, and where I had finished shading on my fourth, that's where I'm going to shade on my eighth. And I have 6/8 left. Okay, so 6/8 is equal to 3/4. Again, shade it lightly with your pencil, and it will really help. And explain it, well, yes. So yes, they are the same size. And then using the model above, it shows that 6/8 are equal to 3/4. Okay, that's just one possible way to do it. If you have other ones, feel free if you can think of other ways to solve that problem. All right, moving forward on page 484, I'm up at the top where it says 2 or more fractions that have the same value are equivalent. So these 2 fractions that we just drew or wrote are equivalent. They both have the same value. 2 or more fractions that name the same part of the whole are equivalent fractions. Just what you did. Flip back a page and see how you shaded in. You shaded in the same amount of the whole. You just separated up into different equal shares, but you still shaded the same amount, okay? So those were equivalent fractions. Let's use the models to find the equivalent fraction for 2/3. Okay, so both models show the same whole. And what I mean by that is both of the models are the exact same size, okay? So let me do my best to draw two rectangles that are the same size. Okay. Not quite, but kind of. So I've got the two rectangles that are the same size. And this first rectangle is split into thirds, or 3 equal shares. And the book already tells us that is 2/3. So let me go ahead and get a different color so you can see where I'm at. So this is shaded in, and this one's shaded in. So 2/3 are shaded in. And then the second fraction is not only split into thirds, but it's split down the middle into sixths, okay? And then it has these 4 shaded in. So if I have 4 of my 6 shaded in, my fraction is 4/6, okay? The shaded parts show the same part of the whole. If I picked up my 4/6 fraction, or this rectangle, and placed it on top of this one, the same amount of the whole shape is shaded in. So then at the bottom it says that 2/3 and 4/6, so I'll go ahead and make this sentence here, and 4/6 are equivalent fractions, so they are equivalent. Got some dust over there. So they are equivalent. So that means 2/3 is equal to 4/6. See? All right, let's look at number 1. I'll give a couple examples of what we're doing, and then I'll leave you guys off to try it on your own. Okay, so looking at both those models to find the equivalent fraction. So if I'm looking at that first model, it's split into fourths, and 1/4 of it is shaded in. So that fraction is 1/4. And then I'm looking at the second model, and if you count the equal shares, there are 8 equal shares. So I know that my denominator is 8, and I need my fraction bar. And my numerator is the number of shares that are shaded in, and that's 2. So looking at that model, 1/4 is equivalent to 2/8. Okay? Again, if you pick up that whole of the 2/8 and place it on top of the 1/4, the same amount is shaded in. Okay? So you have a couple where you have to draw your own or shade your own. So let's go ahead and do that one, which is number 3. And so on number 3, they give us a square, and we have a 1/2 is equal to, so shade one part of, oh, it's already split in half, I'm sorry. So it says shade one part of the model, okay? So I'm going to shade this half of the model. Whoop, shaded that half of the model. Then it says, then divide the model into 4 equal parts, okay? So I'm doing dashed lines, so you know that the book did not give us that 4th equal part. I had to divide it myself. And then I write the equivalent fraction. Well, I have 2 equal shares shaded in of my 4 equal shares total, so 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4. All right, so when you're looking ahead at like finding the equivalent fraction on the next page, so that's 485, and we are looking at, let's look at number 8. So number 8 shows 4/4 is equal to a fraction over 2. Well, I can do 2 things. I can draw it, which is always an option. So if I made a circle and split it into fourths, and made a circle and split it into halves. If I shaded all 4 and I shaded both halves, they're the same, okay? So 4/4 is equivalent to 2 halves, or in this case, 1 whole is equivalent to 1 whole, okay? That's a lot of what you're going to be doing through here, so just kind of look through and really look at your fractions and read each question carefully. You are always allowed to draw a picture if you want. Later on, we will teach some other tips and tricks on how to solve these. You can always go back to page 483 and also just shade out your fractions, because it looks like through this lesson at least, none of your fractions get bigger than 8ths. So you can always go back and shade in through the question that you need. All right, so keep working hard and be the brilliant mathematicians that you are.